Hello everyone, and welcome again to Altiori. Some of us here were late in seeing A Quiet Place, but we finally got to see it tonight, and it was an amazing movie. But there are a lot of questions that we had after seeing it that kind of don't make sense, and we're going to be discussing that in this video today. So we have 10 main qualms about the movie, and they're not in any specific order, but let's start. Starting with the first one, and this is just more of a question. Are the creatures from A Quiet Place related in any fashion to the creatures called demigorgons from the Upside Down in the TV show Stranger Things? The reason why we're asking this is because we noticed that not only the creatures look similar, but we've noticed that in the movie they also both affect electricity. The lights flicker or go out whenever the creatures are close. Why is that? At first we thought it was a motion sensor thing back at the house, but then we noticed when the kid is in the long grass, his flashlight is also affected when the monster is close by as well. If that's the case, and these creatures are actually tied into the same universe, it could explain the origin for these creatures in A Quiet Place. The second objection we have is, how is it that the creature, when it went for the kids in the truck, was not able to tear through the very flimsy metal, but not long ago it was able to rip through the silo, which was much thicker? It merely made dents, and it already knew that the kids were in there, so it's no doubt that this thing would have been able to use its forceful arms to pierce through the metal and kill them quite easily. Yet it spent most of its energy knocking the truck around for the most part. Number 3, why were contraceptives not used? I know that there's a failure rate involved with certain contraceptives, and I get that. But if they realized that there was an accident, they could have used the morning after pill, which I'm sure is available at many local stores, or if they can get their hands on something like unripe papaya to abort a pregnancy, there are also many alternatives to abort the pregnancy. With how resourceful this guy is, I'm pretty sure they would have figured out a way in preparation, knowing that this could happen, to avoid a situation like this that could endanger all of them. It may seem quite harsh, but you wouldn't want to bring a baby into a situation like that without knowing of a surefire way to hurt these creatures. Having a baby in these circumstances is not just bad for the baby, but a liability to the whole family and what's left of the human race. Until, of course, they can find a way to completely soundproof an area and raise the kid in there. Number 4, and this part really got my goat, but Reagan, the deaf girl, not wanting to wear her father's device was a very unrealistic scene. We all know that she blames herself for what happened to her youngest brother. So if her father is trying to create a device to help her hear, whether or not it didn't work the last 5 times they tried, it is her responsibility as a mature individual to try her best to work with her father, because like it or not, and it sounds really harsh and mean, it was her fault that the kid died. Now, it's not right to lay the blame on her forever, to forgive her what happened, but her basically giving him the plane was telling him that it's okay to not listen to your parents. It's not like the parents were saying that he couldn't have the rocket because they couldn't afford it or he didn't work hard enough for it. This was literally a life and death situation, and the bigger sister should have known better. She basically downplayed the seriousness of it. He saw that his big sister thought it was a joke and didn't really take it seriously, so neither did he have to take it seriously. Also, in a situation like that, if I had a child, he would not be at the very back where I could not see him. I was literally tearing my epidermis to shreds with how annoying that whole situation was. And the father, John Krasinski's character, should have known better as well, and he should have told his daughter that wearing the device was not for her, it's for the rest of the family, so what happened to your dead baby brother doesn't happen to the rest of us. In a situation like that, people's feelings are the last thing on the list that you should be concerned of. The 5th issue that we had with the movie was that the father had all this time to make his house soundproof, especially knowing that his wife was expecting. So why wasn't the house better soundproofed? They played it up quite a bit, letting us know that this guy was tech savvy and really resourceful, so that's one of the first things that would have been on the list, especially if you knew that the creatures are very sensitive to sound. Number 6 is a mysterious issue. It's, if the creatures don't eat what they kill, how do they survive? How do they live? What do they feed on? Even the Demogorgon that I mentioned early on in Stranger Things feeds on some of its kill. What is the purpose of these creatures having this amazing hearing if they're not going to use it to hunt for stuff so they can feed on those things? We see that it smushed the raccoon, and it could have eaten it. It snatched up the little boy, and we didn't see what happened to him after that, so it probably ate him. But you figured for the larger organisms, such as the old lady, who I presume to be the wife of the old man that decided to selfishly scream to end his own life, would have been a good enough candidate for a good, hearty meal. So why did they choose not to eat them? That part just makes no sense. Really loud, constant noises don't hurt them. So for number 7, how does a river not drive them nuts when it's constantly making noise? It is a very loud noise and it's constant, but how do they know that this river is not a thing that they should attack? If something is making noise long enough, is it then not a threat, or is it then something that cannot be hurt? How do they make that differentiation between stuff like the wind blowing, leaves blowing across the ground, and a river running versus static electricity constantly droning on? This leads us to number 8. Why weren't there more effective, louder distractions put in place, like radios or walkie-talkies or car alarms, things that can continuously play noise? The father of the family had to have figured, especially knowing that his wife is expecting, that labor would take a while and she'd be screaming for quite a while. So fireworks was not going to be enough to get them through that time. What system did they have put in place should that time come along? I mean, they had 9 months. So again, being with how resourceful they played up his character to be, that just wasn't realistic. I love the fact that he made that little box for the baby with the oxygen mask. So he did premeditate that, but the baby's not just going to stay in the box, and it cannot be fed in the box if she's breastfeeding, and she'd have to walk around and transport the baby. So there should have been a whole area designated for the baby and soundproofed for that purpose. They had more than enough time to prepare for that. That being said, the father did not need to kill himself, because at all times they should have had some mode of a noise-making device or something of the sort that they could have thrown off in the distance to detract from what was happening with the kids in the truck. It also didn't make sense that the father would have gone off the path to get an axe, knowing that these creatures would not be affected by such primitive weapons. Had he gone with the kids at the time that he was supposed to, it is possible that they would have all been fine. Number 9, where's the electricity coming from? There are many different sources of electricity, such as hydropower, solar energy, and wind power. So we assume one of these could have been used. I mean, they did show the river, but it would have been nice for them to at least show a shot of that, at least, so we don't have that little plot hole there, because you know that the audience is going to be expecting answers to those questions. A movie's rating can be brought down drastically if things that are supposed to be obvious and questions that you know the audience is going to be asking is just left up in the air. Something like that should have been explained or at least conveyed in the movie. Maybe it was, and I personally missed it, but I asked others, my other peers, and they did not see anything of the sort as well. We know it's not a generator because it's way too loud, but then again, is it? If it's a constant running noise and the river makes a constant louder running noise, then why would the generator affect the creatures? That's just something that we actually wish they would have conveyed in the movie, which they didn't. Of course, if you feel that we've missed it, please let us know in the comments below, because we'd really like an answer to that question. And finally, number 10. If the government already figured out that these creatures were sensitive to sound, wouldn't the first thing be to do what they did with dogs or other creatures that they realize are very sensitive to sound, have very sensitive and acute hearing, and play a frequency that hurts their ears? They had enough time, because we see that this was made in a publication. So back when papers were still printing, they knew of this information. So how is it that nobody tried this? Nobody tried to play noises and frequencies that hurt animals with sensitive hearing. That was not realistic in the least. And what happened with the little girl, that should have happened way before. The government and scientists at the time, when they were just starting to figure out that these creatures were eating people or causing destruction, would have already set something in place, and we could have avoided this whole mass destruction, genocidal incident of these creatures doing this. Furthermore, if the government had tried everything on them, they would have figured out eventually that these creatures, if they know that noise affects them, that their heads open up to suck in the noise or to detect where it's coming from. So the moment you see that their heads open up and there's soft, fleshy stuff inside, that would have been something that snipers could have taken care of to try and see if they could get their weakness. They're wearing armor, but their heads would have opened up at some point in time. People would have observed that from a long time ago, realistically speaking. So that part alone I found was very unrealistic for the movie, and it kind of detracted from it a little bit. But the experience and the concept itself was well done. Now, I can understand if they did not publish, or no one knew that sound was a weakness to them, or that they hunted by sound, and then later on this Abbott family found that out. That would have been more realistic, because they would have realized, oh wow, sound affects it. We have a way to kill this thing, or we've discovered a weakness. But the people knew of the weakness before and did not act on it. So that wasn't realistic, and I wish they would have just written that whole part out. All in all, I think the movie was a great experience. It was very suspenseful, very scary, but very unrealistic. So what did you guys think about the movie? Did you have any questions, burning questions, after seeing this movie, or things that you feel didn't make sense? We also made videos on this channel before we saw the movie based on the trailer that we thought didn't make sense, and it turned out that a lot of the stuff that we said were spot on in the movie. But let us know in the comments below what you guys think about A Quiet Place, and stay tuned for other movies on films and TV shows. See you later. Thanks for watching. This has been Altiori. You ask, we answer.